talking about how to make the perfect glazed donut. I do have a couple of jokes to start off. What did the two donuts do on their date?
Oh, I think I know this one.
What did they do on their date?
They glazed into each other's eyes. Knock, knock.
Who's
there?
Justin.
Justin who?
Just in time for a donut. Although most people can simply make any yeast donut following recipe, most people don't understand the science or process that goes into making the perfect donut. Explaining yeast, mixing the ingredients, and rolling and frying will help you become a donut master. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is yeast. Yeast is an important ingredient in yeast donuts. So yeast is a single-celled fungus. It helps the donuts rise, and it helps other things rise too, like breads or other rolls, whatever. So the first thing that yeast needs to do is activation. Since yeast is bought as active dry yeast in packages, that means that it's dehydrated and that it's formed into small little pebbles. So we need to revive that packaged yeast by bringing it to life. Warm water does that. So if you soak it in warm water, it'll be alive. Doesn't make sense, be alive. So warm temperature helps yeast actively dry. The temperature that grows yeast is 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and yeast will die at 135 degrees or higher. And that's why we only use warm water and not boiled water. A fun fact, active dry yeast was developed in World War II by the U.S. Army. They developed active dry yeast as dehydrated yeast so they didn't have to refrigerate their normal yeast. The next process of yeast is fermentation. It happens when sugar and flour are added to the mixture because yeast feeds off of sugar. Yeast needs sugar to metabolize for energy, hence why yeast is called the sugar-eating fungus. You might wonder why flour too and not just sugar, since yeast eats just sugar. There is a sugar called maltose that comes from starch and flour. When the yeast starts to metabolize or eat sugar, two byproducts are created, CO2 and alcohol. CO2 creates air bubbles that trap inside the dough, preventing it to rise, giving it a fluffier texture, and the alcohol just creates a different flavor for the dough. The last process is proofing. Proofing allows for dough to release CO2 and helps gluten to stretch. The release of CO2 creates air bubbles, which are good in this case. Air bubbles help dough have that very fluffy texture, like I said before. The next donut making process is mixing the ingredients. To start, you want to start activating your yeast by putting warm water in it. You'll need 1 cup of warm water and 2 packages of the dry activated yeast. You put those two together in a bowl and then put them aside until you're ready to add it to your dough. So I have the first question here. What is the warm water doing to the yeast?
It activated it.
Yes, bringing it to life. So you could choose one after the game. Or not the game, the speech. After we activate the yeast, we want to scald the milk. Scalded milk is just warm milk. Right before boiling begins, it's important not to burn your milk because it'll kill the yeast and kill vital proteins. So to scald your milk, you want to add 1/2 cup to a double boiler and put it on medium-high heat. Stir this frequently so the milk doesn't thicken or burn the bottom. When milk is ready, you'll see small bubbles on the edges, and then the milk should begin to steam. If you're not certain about if it's ready or not, you can use a thermometer. It should be about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, but not over 212. You might ask why scalded milk? Scalded milk kills the proteins which allow gluten to stay intact. Adding hot milk will cause your yeast to die, so if you boil it too hot, you would have to restart all over again. After you're done scottling your milk, you want to take it off of the boiler and put it aside till it becomes a lukewarm temperature. Adding hot milk will cause your yeast to die, but you still want it warm enough so that it'll dissolve your sugar. After you scald your milk, you can add in a half cup of sugar, actually a third cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and a third cup of shortening. Mix that until all the sugar is dissolved, and then you can add activated yeast, 2 eggs, and only 1 cup of flour. So I have another question. What is adding sugar and flour doing to the yeast?
I just think it's eating it, but I can't remember the term.
It's rising. It's making it rise.
Yes, it's metabolizing or eating eating the sugar.
Metabolizing. That's it.
Metabolizing or fermenting. So mix this until the eggs and shortening are well mixed. It should be a batter-like consistency for now. And then afterwards, you want to slowly add in the rest of your flour, 1 cup at a time, till you get your preferred consistency, which should be a shaggy, looser kind of dough. Once you have that shaggy, loose dough, you're going to start kneading the dough. Kneading is important because it provides structure and strength in your dough. Kneading will form your gluten by proteins, and proteins will line up to create amino acids, which forms a matrix within your dough. I know, weird, a matrix in your dough, which is something in your body. To knead the dough, you want to first scatter the surface with flour. Put your dough onto the surface and then pull the sides of the dough inward, pushing down with your palms. You want to continue this until the dough has a perfect elastic texture. If it doesn't have the perfect elastic texture, that's not what I was going to say. To test the perfect elastic texture, you want to poke your finger in the dough and see if it bounces back. If it doesn't bounce back, you have to continue to knead until it has that bounce back kind of feel. So once you're done kneading, put the dough into a greased glass or any kind of bowl is fine, and then put it in a warm area. So why does dough need to be placed in a warm area? What does the yeast like, or what does it do in warm areas? It rises. Yes! Alright. So the next step in perfect dough making is rolling and frying. When the dough is done rising, it should be about double in size. To start rolling, you will flour the surface again, take your dough out, and then flour your rolling pin as well. You will start to roll, and then the dough should be about 1/3 inch thick. Once your dough is about 1/3 inch thick, you will cut it by using a cookie cutter, or I used the end of a glass to cut my dough. And then for the smaller piece, I just used a seasoning top, but you can use a smaller cookie cutter too. So you'll keep doing that until all the dough is used, and then you'll place the donuts on a cookie sheet and let that rise again, or proof, for 30 to 40 minutes. So what is proofing?
The final rising.
The final rising, good. So after you're done proofing, you can start frying. So I already have here proofed donuts that are ready to be fried. They proof for 30 to 40 minutes. And then you're gonna place it in a fryer about 375 degrees. In this case, I use shortening. You can use oil. It doesn't matter, your preference. I think it changes the taste. So you're just gonna place it in here, one side for 1 minute and the other side for another minute, or until they're perfectly golden brown like this. Then you can start making your glaze while it's cooking. This is 2 cups of powdered sugar, a 1/4 cup of milk, and a teaspoon of vanilla, and you'll just stir that all together until it's nice and thick. If you don't want to have such a runny glaze, you can add just more powdered sugar, whichever you like. And then once you're all done stirring, you can take a hot donut or a warm donut and place it in here. Get the donut covered with glaze. And you want to make sure that they're still warm, because it'll kind of all come together at the end.
Oh.
I can taste it already.
That's right. So that is the perfect glazed donut in my eyes. So, with knowing the science of yeast and dough making, mixing the ingredients together, and rolling and frying, you'll be able to make these simple donuts at any get-together. So learning why dough can be so complicated will determine what happened to your dough if it didn't turn out, and will make you become the donut god or goddess.
Just turn that donut.
Yeah.
Yeah.